Hello everyone, my name is ShaineRiley. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going over 3 books I read this week, which are all supernatural books. I'm also going to apologize for my voice. I'm no longer sick, but I don't know if I hurt my vocal cords really bad or if I still have like phlegm or anything like that, because every single time I wake up, if I'm talking a lot or right after I eat, my voice literally sounds like a man. I'm really sorry. Like, I keep clearing my throat and it's same sound. So we're just gonna continue. It's also kind of overcast, so I'm sorry if the lighting's really bad. But we're just gonna make do. I have my drink. I'm a very big drink person. I literally just bought groceries, which I'm very, very happy and excited about. You'll probably see a lot of drinks in my videos. Well, I feel like most people are, but like literally when I go grocery shopping, I buy energy drinks, I buy coffees, I buy the 10 bag of mini Cokes, I buy apple juice, I buy ginger ale. Like, I just love to have options. So yeah, I have been saving money though with buying groceries, so yay for me. I did read 3 books, which I'm very happy about. They're they're not very super spooky, but like they are supernatural, so like it's spooky-esque. So first book I read is called What the Hex by Jessica Clare. I read Go Hex Yourself, absolutely loved it. So we have our main character, Penny. She's basically a part of this organization where there's a list of people waiting to be familiars for witches. This book better explained than any other book that I've read about what familiars are exactly. So they work for witches so that witches can draw power from them so that they can be successful whenever they're like making their potions and spells and all this stuff. Because it does take a lot of power to use it. Also, I think the witches don't want to use their own power because it makes them weak against like any wards that they'd put up or against any enemies that they have. So they're always like at the ready. Also, in return for, the familiars giving the witches their energy and their powers, the witches teach them information. Usually people are familiars for about 20 years and then they like graduate and become like actual witches. So the only problem is there's currently a shortage of witches, so that means that there's a bunch of people or witchy people ready to be familiars, but there's just not enough witches to take on familiars. So there's Penny's late 20s, so she's kind of already worried, like, am I ever gonna get a familiar, or by the time I get a familiar it's gonna take 20 years to actually become a witch? Like, that's a while. Both of her parents are familiars for witches, so like they're never home. She's a very preppy, bright girl. She wears a lot of bright clothes and stuff. She has a pet squirrel, which I forgot the name, but it was like super cute, which I just thought was funny because I'm like, the squirrel's in the book, it's on her shoulder, but I'm like, a squirrel? Like, that was just different. I believe the first book there was a cat, so it was just cute. But then you have another character named William, which is the love interest. He's basically a full-on witch. He's been alive for like 300 years or something, but an unfair kind of situation happens where he's blamed for something and he's trying to prove himself innocent. But because he was blamed for something, the witch congress, whatever they're called, put him on trial and they basically found him guilty. So I think for like 50 years they told him he couldn't work with the familiar, he couldn't spell cast or do anything. So he's put in a situation where he can't do magic, and that's obviously upsetting because that's all he wants to do. But Penny wants to work for a witch, or he's a warlock. But they kind of get put in a situation because William, there's someone going after him, kind of like placing things around him where he's like, wait a minute, this is not normal. So he's trying to figure out who's doing this to him. He kind of already has an idea, but that's why Penny gets presented to him through friends of theirs, because they're like, hey, we really know like you want to work for a witch. And then they know he needs a familiar. So they've like presented it to her. We're like, you don't have to go through with it. If you meet him, you don't like him, like you don't have to be his familiar. But she kind of immediately was like, no, I want to do it, because she was just so eager to start to work with like magic and spells and like see the life of what witches do. So they arrange a meeting, and from the start he's like, this girl's way too colorful, like he dresses in black and like greens and dark colors, and she's like, oh, this man's a little weird, like he's, you know, takes things too seriously. He's kind of just shocked that she said yes so fast, but she's like, well, you know, we have to have a cover story because this is gonna work. She's like, it's definitely gonna work because I want to become a witch and I want to be someone's familiar. So she proposes this idea where they could fake date, because obviously she's gonna bring him around people and they're gonna be like, wait, this dude can't have a familiar. So they're just saying they're dating, but she is his familiar. And it works out perfectly. No one kind of not no one, but most people don't suspect anything. And then you can just see them through their story, how they work together to prove that he's innocent. She's just a really funny character. I think I love Jessica Clare because her books are not high stakes. There wasn't a third act breakup. Their situation was like, you know, trying to get him free. That was kind of like the third act breakup in the sense, because they were like separated for a little bit. But there was a happy ending. Super simple love story. The witchiness is easy to understand. There, you know, nothing's like crazy words or anything that's like world building. It's a very simple just story. I would say definitely a 3. For me, a 3 is not bad. A 3 means it's enjoyable. It was simple. I liked it. I'm gonna recommend it, but it's not like, oh my goodness, this is the best book in the world. Emmy always says 5 stars is a feeling. And a 4 for me is like, it's better than a 3, like this was amazing, but again, 5 stars is a feeling. So it was a 3, would recommend, not bad at all. Super cute, just simple. If you do want something like more serious and high stakes, I don't think this author or these types of books would be for you. But if you just want something to get into the spooky season, or maybe next year, just have something on your radar that's simple, easy, quick. But yeah, this is the first book done. Rating is a strong 3, so I'm very happy. Then, second book. This one, it was funny that I read these in order of like the ones that I liked the most were like, you know, it was like gradual, but we have such sharp teeth. This was different than what I expected. I initially, because I'd read Bride and there's already this world where there's vampires established and that there's werewolves. So you go into it knowing that there's humans too. So like everyone knows everyone. This book didn't start that way. It was just a girl. Her sister is pregnant. She has a twin sister. So the main character's name is Rory. Her twin sister's name is Scarlett. Rory lives in New York now. She has a big corporate girly job. And then Scarlett stayed in their hometown, which is a small hometown. So she's coming back because her sister is pregnant. And she's probably like 6 months pregnant at this point, I think, or like 7. And she goes through kind of like a breakup with her partner. So she's just coming down to support her sister. She normally does come down for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, but she came down like before Halloween. So like right before Halloween. So she was just making sure her sister's okay and stuff. On her way to her sister, when she gets into town, she hits something. She gets out of her car and she sees a deer. And she's like, oh no, I just hit this deer. She feels really bad because obviously that's really sad. But then she's kind of like thinking, she's like, well, wait, this deer was like already like bit through and stuff. So like, you know, it's probably why she hit it was because it was dead. It wasn't like moving. There's like this like silver stuff on the ground everywhere. And she's kind of like, wait, that's not coming from the deer. Like, what is that? Well, initially this other animal comes at her and she thinks it's a bear. She finds out very fast it's not a bear, it's a werewolf. And she's running into the woods because it's chasing her. It attacks her, and she basically gets found on this trail by this woman in the morning, someone random just running, and is like, oh my goodness, there's this girl, she's bleeding everywhere. Well, when she gets into the hospital, her sister obviously greets her, like, when she wakes up, and she's like, hello, like, you're here, and she's like, way to make entrance. They're very sarcastic with each other, which I like, because it wasn't like, oh my goodness, like, you could have died, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, Rory is a very sarcastic character. The banter in this book was super, super funny. When the doctor comes in, he basically tells her she only has, like, scratches and stuff on her body, that she got really lucky. It was, like, a bear or something. She obviously is kind of like, no, I was like, the werewolf, like, well, she didn't really know if it was a werewolf. She's obviously, now that she's waking up, she's kind of like, well, did I get attacked by a bear or a werewolf? Because, like, what's going on? it was a werewolf, all right. It fully like bit into her side. She was in a lot of pain. But when she wakes up, yeah, she's only has a few scratches. So she's kind of like, wait, I thought my injuries were a lot worse. Like, it felt a lot worse than what they're saying I have. Well, when she gets home and stuff and she's looking at her bandages, the scarring is like really ugly and like she's bleeding silver. So she's like, what? Like, this is weird. So she starts doing some research. Obviously it's telling her werewolves and stuff and she doesn't really believe it. But then a full moon happens and she is a little worried because she's like, okay, like, I don't know if I'm actually gonna turn or not. Like, maybe I'm just having weird symptoms. Like, also, like, there's really bad bruising on her ribs and stuff. So she's just like, maybe I'm having really bad side effects. She buys a dog cage because her sister has a pet dog. Or I don't know if she buys it or she takes someone's dog cage, like the dog, or their old dog's cage. I don't know, but she gets a dog cage. And the dog actually at first, like, you know, was happy around her, but then he kind of like growls at her because, again, dogs are, you know, animals, and he's like sensing there's something wrong with her, which was really cool to see because it's like, okay, everyone's just kind of thinking like, oh, this dog has like an issue, but she's kind of like, I know that you're growling at me for a reason. She goes out into the woods, I think like where she was kind of like attacked. She finds like this old warehouse. She basically just waits. She puts herself in the cage. Obviously she turns, she breaks out of the cage and she's just running wild. She doesn't hurt anyone, but she wakes up and she's like, okay, that was interesting. She full on transforms. While she's transforming, it's a pretty ugly process. Like, her teeth fall out and like new ones come in. Her like jaw like rips open, and obviously werewolves have a bigger mouth than humans. So like, I wouldn't say it's like super gruesome, but like you can definitely get the idea of what's happening. Well, when she gets home, she like is throwing up like a rat's tail, like the teeth, the werewolf's teeth, just because everything, it's like weird, like everything reverses. Like under her skin, sometimes when she cuts herself, there's like a really thick layer of fur. Like if she were to like open her entire body, like she'd be the werewolf. Like it's like in her, inside of her. But then when she becomes a werewolf, like she doesn't really remember much, but I think as she starts to turn more and she's in her body longer, she starts to like get a grasp of like the werewolfness. So she's like, it's like she's just like seeing through eyes that like aren't hers, but like she's in the body. So like it's very interesting like how this happens. But yeah, in the morning she's like, okay, for sure I'm a werewolf. She's always hungry. She feels like she smells like a dog. Her hair looks amazing though. That's something that they comment on a lot in the book. Like her actual hair is very like shiny and thick and, you know, just looks amazing. But she basically has to figure out a way to tell her sister. Her sister's also going through pregnancy and the breakup. So you can see their like family issues being sorted. I will say to look up the trigger warnings because she goes through something as a child with her stepdad that it wasn't super graphic. He exposed himself to her, but it definitely still was like traumatic, and something that no one should go through. So I definitely would look into the triggers for the book. I did not expect that was going to happen. I just literally thought it was going to be a book about werewolves, but it really shows why she's such a level and strong-headed person. Like, and then when you see the like flashback of like what she went through as a kid, it's like, okay, that explains why, because she had to emotionally grow up pretty fast. It was a lot, but it was something she went through, but her twin didn't. So you can kind of see their relationship with their mother. You know, it's very different. She doesn't really forgive her mother because she felt like she didn't believe her like when she was a kid, and she brought that man around them. Whereas her twin didn't go through that, and she knew that her mom didn't know that was going to happen, and she felt bad, but it was just like, you know, Rory held that against her for a long time, which is understandable. So you see her and her mom's relationship, and then you have the love interest. I also didn't know that there was going to be romance in this. I don't know why. I think it's because I didn't fully read the synopsis when I went into it, but you have Ian. They were like not childhood sweethearts. He liked her when they were kids, and he admitted it to her, and she just was like, no thank you. As they get older, she sees him a lot differently. She's like, oh wow, like, you know, Ian's a lot different than he used to be. Also in her life, they're in their late 20s, so she's kind of like, okay, maybe this could work out. But she's like a city girl, so she wants to go back to the city. She doesn't ever see herself staying into town. But since she's turned into a werewolf, she's kind of like, I can't go back to the city because there's hundreds of thousands of people. I could attack someone. You know, it's not as easy to hide, whereas, you know, they live in their small town. She can go out into the woods and just run free. So she definitely is, like, contemplated, like, okay, I might have to move back home. I can't go back to where, you know, my life had started in the city. And Ian really, really likes her. He wants to be in a relationship with her, but you can see a lot of push and pull. Like, she sometimes flakes on him because, like, the issues with their mother, like, when she visits, or even her twin sister, because she's pregnant and she has to, like, take care of her. But also she's turning, like, on the full moons and stuff, and she's just trying to figure out what's happening to her body, really. It's a really, really sweet ending. The book was super interesting the whole time. There was, like, small little, like, twists where you're like, wait, what? The person, obviously, if she's a werewolf and she got turned by another werewolf, that means that there's another person out there that knows themselves that they're a werewolf. So you end up figuring out who it is, which was super interesting. Not who I thought it was going to be. And then, yeah, you just see her story, how she's trying to figure out being a werewolf, and her love story and how to manage telling him. Even her twin sister she has to tell. And then she becomes an aunt. So it was really sweet. Definitely an interesting story. I would give this one, I think I would probably rate it a 3 to 3.5. Just because it was still enjoyable, but I feel like the scale of, like, Jessica Clare's book and Rachel Harrison, it's very, like, small scale. Like, it's literally just kind of, like, secluded, like, in a spooky-ish town where, like, there's regular people, but then, like, these little things are happening. Whereas Allie Hazelwood, like, the vampire werewolf realm, it felt a lot bigger. It kind of felt like the Avengers in the sense of, like, people knew everyone. Like, there was the humans, which were scared of both, but then you had werewolves who seemed more trustable than vampires, and then the vampires and the werewolves didn't like each other. So, like, it just seemed a little bit more, like, also, like, Twilight. Like, the levels of, like, seriousness were a little bit higher, if that makes sense, or, like, high stakes. Whereas these past two books, it was just kind of like, okay, they just so happen to be a werewolf, and there's a love story, or there's, like, family issues that need to be sorted and dealt with. So I like that because it just felt more homey and, like, cozy, simple reads. There wasn't anything crazy going on. 3.5 is my end rating. Then the last book that I read, this was my favorite out of all of them. I'm gonna say off the bat it was a 4-star. Have you ever watched, like, heist or movies where they first, like, introduce the problem and then they introduce all the characters and then you get everyone's perspective and then they start working together as a team, getting their plan, their scheme together, and then it gets executed? That's how the book went. And it's called A Tempest of Tea. I found out by finishing it that I believe there's going to be a second book, so it's going to be a duology. This was so cool. It legit reminded me of the Peaky Blinders, the town that it's set in. It was, like, overcast every single day in my brain in this book. Like, just Peaky Blinders, just, like, gloomy, and, like, gangs and stuff were going on. What this book is about, it's this girl, and she owns this tea house. It's called Spindrift. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I think so. And she has a brother. They basically adopted each other as siblings because when they were younger, both of their parents, like, died and stuff. So they kind of just help each other out, like, when they're, like, 8-9 years old. I think they find each other and then they, you know, stick together the rest of their lives. The main character's name is Arthi, and her brother is named Jin. I will say Jin was probably my favorite character out of everyone. I think he was just really funny. He reminded me of my brother Roman. He was, like, goofy, like, but he was, like, serious in a way. He literally, it was like the Peaky Blinders. He always walks around with an umbrella. Jin was, like, my favorite character out of everyone in this book. There's 5 main characters, but the both of them own this, like, tea place. I don't want to call it a tea shop. It's a tea place. During the day, they serve tea to everyone and biscuits, but at night, it turns into, like, a blood house, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's for vampires. In this society, vampires are known, but they're not, like, welcome. The government has laws where these vampires cannot feed on anyone unless they're given consent. So that's a good thing. Obviously, they want to keep people in line, but it's still like a taboo thing to discuss vampires. So you see Arthi kind of take advantage of that, and she's like, well, vampires are kind of shunned from society, and she already owns a tea house, like we can definitely turn this into a place, like at night we serve blood to vampires and they're gonna pay us. So they're getting money, you know, paid to them during the day and at night. They're technically criminals, obviously. Arthi, the way that she kind of has a hold on other criminals and makes deals and bets and stuff is by knowing their secrets and threatening them with those secrets, which is super cool because it's like she's not a super like violent person. She will like hit someone and defend herself, but it's mostly just threats, and people are scared of her. They know that she means business and that she's serious about that. So it was really cool to see such a strong like female character, and then Jin is also just like her wingman, but he himself is a very witty, smart, and he's super funny. So I really, really enjoyed the book. You can see how they put the heist together. The reason why they're putting a heist together is because their tea bloodhouse place is basically going to be like uprooted by the government. The government doesn't want them to have it because they see Arthi and Jin as a threat, because they've never been able to prove that they serve blood there. Like, but it's like whispered in secrets. Like, people know it's a thing, but no one's ever been able to prove it, because it's really cool. Like, when it's closing time for the tea house, like the tables will go into the walls and booths will come out, and like the servers will then serve blood, or there'll be blood companions is what they're called. It's like when people sign up so that vampires can feed off of them. But like every single time the police show up, they can never prove that that's actually happening. So like they'll like hide everything and then be like, oh, like why are you here? So it was really interesting. It felt like very airy, and it was kind of like, are they gonna get caught? Like, what's happening? And you see them try to not frame the government, but expose the government for what they've been doing and hiding. There's a lot of cool characters you meet along the way. There's a character part of their team called Mateo. He is a vampire, you do know that, and he's like an artist. But he reminded me of Damon Salvatore, but I also played The Sims, so like the Goth family. He just held himself like a certain way. He knew he was famous, that he was a great artist. Like, he was very confident and sure of himself, which was also just funny because he has an interest in Arthi, but Arthi kind of looks at him like, dude, you're crazy. But she also is like attracted to him. And then you have Jin, and there's this character named, I believe her name's Felicity, but he calls her Fleck. I think that's how it's pronounced. Like, she shortened it. And they have a romance story between themselves, and she's, again, very bubbly, like, colorful, and Jin's not. Arthi's also very serious. Mateo's serious, but he's more of like a, like, no, I don't want to say cheerful, but he's just kind of like, I don't even say the life of the party. He's a different character than the rest of them. He's very, very interesting. They're all entertaining characters. And then, you have another character. I don't know how to pronounce his name, because to me it wasn't Faith. It's a character's name that starts with an F. I think out of all of them you get the least time with, but he carries around a kitten with him. He like found this cat, and he's kind of like an assassin. He worked for the government and stuff, but you're just kind of like odd because it's like this man that knows how to fight and stuff, and he's just carrying around a little kitten on his shoulder all the time. But it was a really sweet story. I was very shocked for the ending. There's a great twist at the end, and then I was shocked because I thought it was only going to be a standalone. It wasn't like when you're like sitting there like, what? And like you get upset because you're like, why did that happen? It's just more of a like, wait, this is crazy and I want to know more. So it left off on a good place. Like, if I didn't pick up the second book, you would just kind of be left with a little mystery, but I'm pretty sure you can like find stuff on Reddit of like people talking about things. Or like suspecting like who the person is at the end, like when secrets are revealed. But also I just really want to read the second book because I love these characters. I love the story. It reminded me of a lot of the Peaky Blinders. Like, all the way that they acted was just, you know, there's funny characters and then there's seriousness, and people respect each other, but they're like scared of the main big boss people. It was just really interesting. So I rated this a 4. I was really happy. Like, when I read these books, I didn't read them in a certain order of like which ones I preferred. I just really was like, okay, I want to read all of my supernatural books together. So witches, vampires, werewolves. And it just so happened that the order I read them in was like they kept increasingly, you know, they got better and better. So it was really nice to end on this one. I actually read this one on my Kindle, which I was really, really happy to use. I never changed the stickers out because initially I didn't plan to read on my Kindle, but I just, again, was getting back into reading. I wanted to switch up like reading from a book just to reading on my actual Kindle. I really, really liked it. You read so fast on your Kindle. And also if you're someone that has a hard time actually reading a physical book, if they're too heavy, or you just don't like the feeling of a book, if you're someone that likes devices more, I would definitely invest in getting the Kindle. I do know that there's a new one now, or it's gonna release, and it's colorful. I don't care for that. I'm just like happy like the books not being in color. Also, I just got this last year, so I'm perfectly happy with mine. But in case you're interested, I know my twin wants to really buy a Kindle, so I think I'm gonna, you know, tell her about that one. But yeah, all these books were amazing, great. I'm glad I got 3 books off of my TBR, but they were all very, very enjoyable. So I'm glad I read these. I now need to figure out what else I'm gonna read. I have no clue. I do. I kind of want to read something like dark romance, or no, not dark romance. I want to read dark fantasy or thrillers. I don't know, because these books were like spooky enough, but they weren't like crazy, like I'm getting scared. It just was like entertaining. So I do want to read like a dark fantasy where there's like higher stakes. A Tempest of Tea definitely felt like the most like high stakes type of book, and like you were actually a little genuinely worried about the characters. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will see you next time. I just almost died choking.